This is Killer Innovations, a show about ideas, creativity, and how you can innovate. Welcome to the Innovator's Garage, where you learn to create your next game-changing killer innovation.
Hello and welcome. I'm Phil McKinney. This week, we are reaching deep into the archive and bringing you one of our most downloaded shows. Enjoy.
Innovation is all about translating ideas into real products, real services, and real solutions. As I've said in the past, ideas without execution are a hobby. And I don't know about you, but I'm not in the hobby business. With that said, the process all starts with ideas. Now, ideas can come from any number of sources. It can come from employees, from customers, from partners, from just lone inventors out there that have come up with a really great idea that they think you might be interested in. They can come in the form of outputs from workshops, brainstorming sessions, call for ideas. You put out a request and people submit. The question is how do you manage your ideas? What I mean is how do you log them? How do you track them? How do you rank them relative to all the other ideas that are in your funnel? Ask yourself the question, where are your ideas today? If you had to go back to all the brainstorming sessions that you've done just over the last few years, could you easily put your hand on the list of ideas that came out of all those brainstorming sessions? Now, many of you are probably saying, well, why would I ever want to do that? I've gone through those lists. I've picked out the best ideas, and those are the ones we're working on. Ideas have value over time. Now, I've seen some organizations use things like spreadsheets, wrote a little Access database, some kind of a Word document or a Google Doc, store them in the cloud, but they're scattered out all over the place, and they're actually scattered across all the different people within your organization. Now, if you truly believe that ideas are the currency of the economy, then you need to manage your ideas as a valued asset. You can't treat them just as scrap pieces of paper or post-it notes stuck next to your monitor. You need to treat them like a valuable asset. So, what's needed in a good idea management system? 1, idea capture and tracking. Sounds simple. You need an easy way to put ideas into the system, track them over time, evaluate them, and link them to possibly being part of other ideas that grow into being something of significance. That idea capture needs to be able to be done by people, let's say, on your innovation team, but it should be open to other people within your organization to easily submit an idea that gets into the idea management system. That way you've got one place to look, one place where all of your assets, this very valuable asset of ideas, is now sitting. Once you have that idea capture in place, now you can use this tool to do idea evaluation. Do you open it up and allow, everybody in the organization to look at it and vote, and therefore the idea with the most votes wins? Do you use some kind of a ranking process similar to what I've shared here in the podcast? Asking the 5 key questions and asking people to rank each idea against the questions. Do you crowdsource the feedback, just asking for people to post comments, and then the ones that get the most discussion going are ideas that you look at? You need some form of an idea evaluation tool as part of this. How do you bubble up the best ideas to be looked at more seriously by management? 3, a good idea management system allows for ad hoc team collaboration. What I have found with really well-designed tools is, as people submit an idea, they go through search and they found that somebody else is working on an idea that maybe is not quite identical, but it's similar, and it's a different part of the organization. So by simply going into the system with an idea in mind, they find somebody else working on something similar, and they start to team up. They combine their efforts. They combine their areas of expertise. So a very well-designed tool that acts as this kind of social hub of innovation within your organization allows for these ad hoc teams to come together. The result is that you actually get better ideas because you're getting cross-organizational efforts that one side may not be aware of another part of the organization working on something, and those collaborations can really generate some exciting ideas. Number 4, support whatever process, steps, gates, whatever your method is for innovation. So once an idea gets into the system, it gets ranked, it gets prioritized, you start down the effort of doing the execution, meaning you're going to turn it from an idea into a real innovation, then this idea management then allows you to track those ideas through whatever the gating process that you're using. One, it just allows you to say, being able to say that, hey, this was a great idea and it's actually in the execution phase, or this idea is still in the evaluation phase. However the phases you use within your organization, your tool needs to match. Now be careful here, because there's a lot of tools out there that will force you to follow their process. You want a tool that follows your process, because your organization is unique. Your decision-making process, your evaluation process, the way your senior executives want to hear about programs and projects. So you need a process that matches you, not you modifying it to match some tool. Number 5, it needs to support pausing ideas. Now, what do I mean by pausing an idea? I have a saying that just has gotten ingrained in my brain over the years, having gone through this frustration with ideas that I've been leading in teams, is that the difference between a good idea and a really great idea is not about the idea, it's about the timing. The market's not ready, customers aren't ready, your organization's not ready, the regulatory environment from the government is not ready. There's lots of reasons. The key is that if you've got a really good idea and what you're really running up against is this timing, you need the ability to pause an idea. Have an idea that's somewhere in the phases of process, but you capture it in such a way that you can literally hit a pause button and think about it as like sticking a book on the shelf in a library, and then 6 months, a year, 2 years down the line, go back, pull that book out of the library, and pick up where you left off. Now, it's a little bit harder to do with ideas, because the idea really is coming off of off an individual's thoughts, and you have to be able to get back to that individual and get them re-engaged to restart the programs or restart the thinking around the ideas. But it's critical that organizations find a way in their idea management tools to literally be able to pause an idea, capture all of the assets, and then be able to come back and reevaluate those ideas at some point in the future when the timing is right. And the 6th piece that's critical for your idea management system is the ability to issue what I call challenges. Now, if you just sit back and let employees or whoever submit ideas into your idea management tool set, you're basically running your idea management process as if it was an electronic version of a suggestion box. And what you're going to find is that a lot of those ideas then just become incremental. If you really want breakthrough ideas, you need to issue challenges. These are carefully worded questions, problems, areas of interest, and put that out to the general population with some form of incentive for them to spend time thinking of the ideas and approaches that will allow them to answer or solve that in the form of ideas. Well-constructed challenges generate a wealth of really good ideas, and it gets the organization thinking, so it serves 2 purposes. Not only do you get really good ideas, but you're signaling to the organization kind of where the strategy is going, where the direction of the organization is going. Good idea management tool systems have a way to not only issue these challenges, but capture the ideas. So that becomes a critical part when you're looking at your idea management system. So again, 6 things that are critical for your idea management system is 1, idea capture and tracking, kind of the basics. 2, idea evaluation. How do you rank and select the best ideas that are in that funnel to be the ones that you want to work on? 3, ad hoc team collaboration, allowing individuals to find other individuals who've submitted a similar idea so that they actually can begin working together. 4, support whatever process you have in place. The tool must match to your process. You should never modify your process to match the tool. 5, support pausing the idea. If you have a really great idea and the timing is wrong, pause it. come back to it when the timing is right. And 6, enable challenges. Rather than just being a reception of ideas, being able to push out to the organization a challenge and therefore trigger ideas to be created. Now, over my career, I've used a lot of different tools, and I'm not going to go in here and give you a recommendation because your organization is different. But let me share with you some of my experiences, not with specific vendors, but as a broader context of the experiences I've had with these tools.
You are listening to Killer Innovations on the BizTalk Radio Network.
Number 1, without a system or tool, you're lost. Treating your ideas as an afterthought in the forms of notebooks and scrap pieces of paper and little emails that you've sent around is not going to be successful. You have to be able to treat them as a real asset. So you have to have a tool or something in place. I mean, think about it. You run a brainstorming session. You bring 10 of your best and brightest people into the brainstorming session. You give them a challenge. They crank out, a couple hundred ideas. Someone says, I'll type them up and I'll send them around in an email. Someone dutifully types them up, sends them around in an email, and then what happens? Nothing. 1, nobody ever picks an idea off the list, right? Because it's just so overwhelming to dig through 200 ideas. But 2, the only documentation you have is that email. There's no system to take those ideas, put it in, and publish it out to people to get their views or opinions on it, right? So you have to have the fundamental system. Number 2, one of the things I learned in my experiences is don't restrict access to the tool. Open it up to 100% of your organization. When I was running the Innovation Program Office at HP, we actually opened up the tool, what we called the HP Garage, to all 320,000 employees of HP to be able to come in, submit ideas, and see all of the ideas that were in the innovation funnel. Now, some organizations will totally freak out at that idea, because what happens if someone leaks it, or what happens if information gets out on things that we're working on? You have to get to the point where you trust your employees. And what I have found is the risk of a leak versus the value of including 100% of the employees in the innovation pipeline was critical. So don't restrict. 3rd, promote your tool constantly and consistently. Every talk in front of employees, every time you're out meeting with anybody, tell them about the tool, send them the URL so they can submit their own ideas. Get people to engage on the tool, looking at ideas and providing their feedback. You just can't do this as a one-time blast email and then wait for the employees and everybody to submit their ideas. You need to be the evangelist for your idea management system. You need to be out there telling people that you are actually using it, that you are using that as the mechanism to evaluate programs and projects. Tell the engineering teams that if they want an idea to even get evaluated, the only way that it does get evaluated is if they use that system and submit it. And that'll start training people that this becomes the mechanism by which ideas are then managed and tracked within your organization. So you need to be willing to promote constantly and consistently. And the other point that I would strongly recommend from my experiences is close the loop with the idea submitters. Now, early on in one of the early systems that I was part of, the system got deployed. Employees submitted ideas, engineers submitted ideas, partners submitted ideas into the system, and they didn't hear anything back. And I didn't really appreciate how frustrating that was to people who submitted their ideas. So one of the things that I've put in place when I've deployed these systems since then is that there's a guaranteed turnaround. Someone submits an idea, they're going to hear back. They're going to hear back, within 2 weeks, 4 weeks, 8 weeks, whatever is going to work within your approach. but you have to close the loop. They want to hear back. They're used to not hearing anything, right? They submit an idea in the process of a brainstorming session. Someone dutifully sends that email, and then nothing ever happens. So they're used to submitting ideas and dropping into this massive bucket that nothing ever happens to. If you're going to run an idea management system, close the loop with the idea submitters. Give them feedback. And the last area from my experiences of working with these idea management systems is think about applying some form of gamification. Now, what I mean by gamification is make it fun. Give them some kind of a point or scoring system so that the people who are more active on the system have more points. They earn rank or whatever it might be. Turn it into a fun process of being involved and getting excited. People like the kind of recognition that a good, well-designed gamification portion of these systems can deliver. So, for instance, issue points for people who submit ideas. Give them points for ideas that make it to the screening process. Give them points for providing feedback. So if they get on the system, maybe they're not a submitter of ideas, but maybe they're in there and they're providing feedback to other ideas, saying, hey, have you thought about X? Give them points. If their idea gets selected and it's going through the actual innovation process, give them a lot of points for that. Then what happens then is one, you can use these point systems to actually find those people across your organization who are most passionate about innovation and turn them into helping you be the evangelist within your organization. But they also then earn credibility across their organization. And what it points out, and what I have found when you do these kinds of gamification systems in idea management programs, is that you'll find highly creative people who are really good at coming up with ideas who are not part of your normal group that you interact with. They may not even be part of R&D. They may be in part of legal or finance or whatever. And through the process of this gamification, you actually helps you identify the highly creative people within your organizations who may not be on your radar screen. Now, be careful here. It has to be well designed. Now, most of the commercial idea management systems really don't have a gamification portion to it. But it's one of those areas that I think is important, and it proved to be extremely valuable to me in my experience. Idea management is a must-have tool if you're serious about innovation. If you're serious about innovation, you need to treat your ideas as the valuable asset they are. You need to track, inventory, warehouse your ideas, and more importantly, find those idea generators within your organization, those innovation champions. They become the key to the growth of your organization and for your success in the highly competitive markets we all face. Now, what I'm going to ask here is a special ask. What I'm asking is drop me a note on how you've used this podcast to create something. Whatever it is. Nothing is too small or too minor. So drop me a note and describe to me how you've used the podcast to create something. And what I want to do is I want to aggregate these ideas and share them with the Killer Innovations community as a way to spark their own ideas, their own things that they could be using, or ways to be more creative to come up with better ideas. So again, drop me the note, send it to feedback@philmckinney.com. And again, thanks for the time for listening, and we'll talk to you real soon. Bye-bye.
You are listening to Killer Innovations on the BizTalk Radio Network. We are hitting the road this summer in the mobile studio to meet innovators and to record new episodes of Killer Innovations. While we are away, we will be replaying some of my favorite episodes from the archive. Enjoy. Last June 1 of 2012, it was announced that I was taking over this new role. Now, if you're interested in the background, feel free to go to the blog site and take a look. But coming in June 1, what I did was I set out a 100-day plan, looking at the current organization and truly trying to understand what makes it tick. So I spent a significant amount of time, roughly the first 45 days or so, doing one-on-one interviews with all the key stakeholders. That's meant the senior staff within the organization, key participants outside, and industry experts. And I basically asked them 4 questions. And this is the questions that I asked as part of my learning process. So the first question I asked was, what should we preserve? What is it we do good that we should just keep on doing? Second question, what should we stop doing? What is it that we do that just totally annoys you or actually gets in the way or is detrimental to success? And what is it we should stop? Third question is, hey, I'm the new guy. What is it that you most hope I do? What is that thing that you would hope the new guy would come in and change? The fourth question is, hey, I'm the new guy. What do you hope I not do? What is your one fear that I won't do coming in as the new guy? Now, what's interesting about that last question is that when I talk to all of the employees within this organization, 95% of the employees gave me the exact same answer. And that is their biggest fear is that the new CEO would come in and not change anything. That it would just keep the status quo. The employees don't have their head stuck in the sand. They got the fact that for the organization to be successful going forward, things fundamentally had to change. And they were hoping that whoever came in as the new CEO, that they would not be afraid to upset the apple cart and really take a look at the entire organization top to bottom. Now, based on this charter of change, which I felt I got both from the employee base but also the board of directors, first thing I wanted to do was really understand what made up the core attributes. What makes the organization the organization? Now, what I found was a little surprising. Now, you could argue that there are some core attributes, that there are certain policies and procedures. But in my assessment is that the core attributes were either inherently done by accident or worse, non-existent. Now, this actually created a great opportunity because I could build the core attributes up from scratch. So how do you do that? Well, first of all, the key there is you got to help everyone understand why core attributes are so important. Now, there's a previous podcast, and there's also a blog post on this that is from last year that you can go out and check, and I'll link to it in the show notes. The first thing out of the gate was collect up a list of words that either describe what the organization is, or in this case, more importantly, what is it the team wants the organization to become? When there's no core attributes that exist, this is an excellent opportunity to participate in the process of defining an organization that you want to work with, that you want to be a part of, that you want to contribute to. So we collected up all these words. Now, keep in mind, core attributes articulate what you stand for. They explain why you do business the way you do. When all else fails, organizations need to be able to fall back on a set of core attributes that drive everything from decision-making to priorities to how teams interact with each other and how we get viewed outside in the marketplace. So, what were the core attributes that we came up with as part of this new organization? Well, I'm going to run through the list here relatively quickly just to give you a feel, but these are not what I would call core attributes that apply to every organization. Core attributes need to be personal. They need to mean something to your organization. So, the core attributes that we came up with include, we are passionate. We need to have passion. As I've said in the past, if you're going to play in the innovation game, what I hire for is passion. I can teach technical skills. I can teach how to be more innovative. I can teach an innovation funnel process. What I cannot teach is I can't teach passion. Core, fundamental, people in the organization, the entire organization needs to be passionate about what it is they do. Second, we think big and bold. We are an R&D organization. We get funded by outside corporations that are in the industry to develop and invent what's going to be the next big product or service. We get paid to think big and bold. This attribute I put in place specifically to challenge the organization to get out of the rut of kind of the incremental next innovation that inherently describes any industry. We need to think big and bold. Third, we are fast and agile. When I went back and I looked through all my notes on the 4 questions that I asked all the stakeholders, one of the key complaints about the organization was it was slow and it was fixed. Not a lot of flexibility to do new and different things or to do it a different way. So this is a core attribute to challenge this process or this perception of the organization from the stakeholders. We need to be fast and agile. Fourth is, we are a team. We're small. We're not that large of an organization. The only way to success is not about individuals, but about team. Next is, we classified an attribute around what we call unlocking individual potential. How do we enable people within the organization to achieve way beyond what they even think they can do themselves? How do we challenge individuals? How do we put together development programs? How do we create an environment where people go far beyond contributing to the success of the organization, far beyond anything they would have thought they could do? The next one, we lead by example. When I went back again and looked at my notes from the 4 questions I asked all the stakeholders, one of the key attributes of this organization was its honesty and integrity. I got constant praise and constant accolades about the honesty and integrity of the organization down to each individual within the organization. And we defined this as really being the anchor, the cornerstone, the key to our organization. And in this case, we say that we lead by example. We're going to set the bar on how we interact with each other, how do we interact with people in the industry, and how we interact with people outside the industry. We lead by example, and core to that is our honesty and integrity. And last, we are resourceful. We are a small organization, so it's key for us to deliver ideas and innovations in R&D far beyond our size and scale. So we have to be resourceful in how we do that. So again, we are passionate, we think big and bold, we are fast and agile, we are a team, we unlock individual potential, we lead by example, and we are resourceful. Now, once you've captured this, and believe me, this took months to pull this together, and people had different wordings, and I actually stayed out of it. I did not inject myself into putting together the list. In fact, I only contributed my input after the list was about 80-85% done, because I didn't want to have undue influence into the final list that was created. Now, once you have that list, now you're ready to start the process. Having the list is not the end, it's the beginning of the process. Now, what is the process? How do you move from having this list to really integrating it inside the organization? First things first, the senior executives must own this. This is not an HR process. This is not a personnel development team process. This must be always controlled and owned by the senior executives. The key here is the senior executives must own this. You are listening to Killer Innovations on the BizTalk Radio Network. Then everybody in the organization needs to understand that these attributes are core and essential. And it now becomes the bar that we will hold ourselves to. We will hold ourselves to interacting with each other, interacting with our stakeholders, and interacting outside of our industry and our organization. And we need to manage the process to get everybody on board. It's communicating the core attributes, communicating the importance, and then working a process to get everybody in the boat. So what did we do? How did we actually go through this? First off, we talk about them. We would do it at all hands meetings and team meetings, and we filtered this through to the entire organization. In fact, I would challenge you that if you meet anybody inside the organization and ask them about the core attributes, they would be able to walk through and explain to you what the core attributes are and why each one of them is important to our organization. Now, rather than just telling people these were the core attributes, what we did is the initial list, and there's been some tweaking to it, we published that and then invited people to come in as part of group sessions and come up with ideas on, did they like that particular core attribute? But more importantly, think about that core attribute and how we should live it. How we should, as an organization and as individuals, live that core attribute. Passion, unlocking individual potential, lead by example. We collected up that list, and we actually got then volunteers from the rank and file within the organization to help brainstorm and pull together a set of recommendations to the executive team about how we can live it. So it isn't just about big and bold and those types of things, but actually how do we live them? How do we do them? What would be things? What would be proof points that we could go off and do? As part of that exercise, we also created an assessment to allow the team to assess themselves. Could I, as an individual, live to these core attributes, and how am I living to these core attributes? We did it as a peer. So people at the same level got assessed by their peers around those core attributes, and we did it as a team globally. It was a real eye-opener for everybody in the organization, where people recognized that they were already living a number of these core attributes, and there were some core attributes that they, maybe wasn't a negative that they weren't doing them, they just hadn't really applied and really thought about them. And out of that, we got an extreme positive feedback response around those assessments, which allowed people then to think about what are the things they were going to do personally over the next 6 to 9 months to really live out these core attributes. The other thing we've done is we've changed our hiring process. New recruits that are being considered to come into the organization get assessed against the core attributes. If there's not a match, it makes no sense to bring somebody into the organization. We've set the core attributes, and everybody in the organization is aligned on this. And in fact, this was really driven by hiring managers using the core attributes really as that filter screen to make sure that people coming into our organization aligned with the culture of what it is we were trying to build here. The result is that the new hires that we recently brought into the organization who have been assessed against these core attributes have hit the ground running and have had huge impact into the organization. The other thing we've done is we've included core attributes into our performance management. At the end of the year, employees are getting assessed as to the set of those core attributes as to do they never exhibit them, do they sometimes exhibit them, or do they always exhibit them? And we're going to pick and roll around and change which core attributes we're going to measure each year based on what are the things that we're working on. Now, the assumption is that we're living all the core attributes every year, all the time, but we will pick and choose ones each year that we want to particularly emphasize on. So this year, there's 4 or 5 that we've chosen that will become part of that performance management. Now, coming up. I've been in this new role for a year. We started this whole process on core attributes 9 months ago. And what I can tell you is that the impact on the organization, the impact on the morale from the standpoint of people feeling like that they're contributing and they understand the organization and why we do things a certain way, has just been beyond any set of expectations I could have had. The impact on the organization is, like I said, beyond anything that I had expected. But the fact of the matter is it's not a situation where we've documented them, we've run through this process, we now have a hiring process in place, it's part of people's annual performance and bonus calculations, and we're done. This is never ending. In fact, a group of employees have come forward and talked about adding one more core attribute. And there's a discussion that's going on. It's not being driven by the senior executives, albeit we own it, but we want these core attributes to be owned by everybody. So, fact is that you've got to be open to that. It's not static, and it's a never-ending process. That includes things like rewarding teams when they show a core attribute, when somebody's done something big and bold or showed off, exceptional teamwork. Someone from Team A stepped over and helped Team B to do something that just had big impact. Likewise, and this is the tough part of the conversation, if you have people in your organization who are not living up to the core attributes, then you need to take that uncomfortable process of having the conversation with them. And if it's not going to work out, no foul, but work them out of the organization. If you let people stay within your organization who are not aligned with the core attributes, then the rest of the organization will start believing that the core attributes are not that important and not everybody's getting measured up against them. So, obviously, we all like the positive impact from these activities, but the fact is, in some cases, you got to deal with the difficult ones. And that includes getting rid of people who are not aligned with the core attributes.
You are listening to Killer Innovations on the BizTalk Radio Network.